Some time ago, I had to take a job as a night attendant at an old county morgue in a quiet Pennsylvania town. In itself, it was an easy job, a 24-hour shift followed by 3 days of rest. Plus, as people in our profession like to joke, the clientele here was exceptionally cooperative. At first, of course, I was terrified as hell and disgusted to be around the dead bodies in the basement. But after a couple of weeks, the human psyche adapts and I got completely used to the constant sterile cold and the heavy stench of formaldehyde. On one cold autumn day, I clocked in for my regular shift. Toward the evening, old Mitch showed up in the office. This man had worked in this specific morgue for probably over 20 years, knowing every dark corner. He walked up to my desk, looked me straight in the eyes, and said in the very quiet voice, "Son, tonight, lock yourself inside in the night office with a deadbolt. And no matter what you hear, no matter what happens outside, do not dare to open that door. Tonight is the very bad night. All sorts of things can come here." Hearing this, I couldn't hold back. My intellectual arrogance took over and I literally snapped. I hit old Mitch with every rude epithet and mockery I could think of. It felt deeply insulting to me that an uneducated night watchman was trying to scare me, a man with a prestigious university degree, with some stupid children's ghost stories. Mitch listened to my tirade silently, his expression unchanged. He just signed and said quietly, "As you wish, I warned you." Then he turned around and walked away into the darkness of the corridor. By the end of the day, I probably wouldn't have even remembered this ridiculous incident, but one detail subconsciously alarmed me. Mitch was completely sober and his face was frighteningly serious. Usually he loved to drink and joked constantly, but not this time. Late in the evening, Dr. Andrews, our senior pathologist, stayed late at the morgue to talk with me about complex philosophical topics. We sat in the small night office, drinking strong coffee and arguing about life after death. But that detail, the sober, somber Mitch, just wouldn't leave my head, causing a strange sense of discomfort. Finally, closer to midnight, my companion said goodbye and left. I locked the heavy external entrance door of the building behind him and was left entirely alone in the whole complex. I did my mandatory rounds. I checked the cooling units, made sure everything was in order in the autopsy rooms, turned off the main lights, and returned to my night office. Our morgue had the following layout. Right past the entrance door was my office, and from it stretched a long T-shaped corridor. At the very end of this hallway were the heavy metal doors leading to the main cold storage and the dissection rooms. Throughout the night, only a few dim emergency lamps burned in that T-shaped corridor. In the night office itself, the light was also supposed to be on according to the rules, but I turned it off to catch some sleep. All the internal doors in the morgue were never locked with a key. They were just tightly closed. On my office door, there was an old iron latch, but we always left this door wide open. It was exactly the same on that ominous night. It was unnaturally quiet. Not a breath of wind outside, no noise from passing cars. I sat at the desk, lazily reading an old book, but every now and then I involuntarily listened to the creepy silence. Around midnight, I started to feel very drowsy, and I decided to lie down on the leather couch. And at that exact second, I clearly heard the heavy door of the cold storage room creak at the very end of the corridor. Carefully, almost silently, but it opened. I slowly peeked out of the night office into the hallway. The space was flooded with the dim, scattered light of the lamps. Where the morgue doors were, it was solid darkness, and it was impossible to make out anything. I felt extremely uneasy. Trying to calm my frayed nerves, I thought it was just a draft from the ventilation system. I decided to go and check why the door had opened. To give myself confidence, I stepped deliberately hard, and my footsteps echoed in the hollow, heavy rhythm of the tiled floor. And then I noticed, no, rather felt with my sixth sense, ahead, in the depth of the black corridor, some barely perceptible wet movement. Mitch's words instantly flashed in my brain. Lock yourself in and don't come out no matter what happens. A freezing sweat broke out over me. I began slowly, step by step, back into the night office. I burst inside, slammed the door with a wild force, and sharply flipped the iron latch. In that exact moment, the rustle of fast, heavy barefoot steps rushed down the T-shaped corridor. They stopped right outside my door. For a moment, silence reigned, and then, from the outside, someone forcefully, violently yanked the metal door handle. The door gave way by a few millimeters, but the old latch wouldn't let it go any further. In the narrow gap, an indistinct, massive dark silhouette flickered, and a sickeningly sweet smell of decomposition instantly leaked into the night office. I screamed in terror, squeezed my eyes shut, and with wild strength gripped the door handle with both hands from my side. From the corridor, something horrific and maddening was persistently trying to break inside to get to me. It stretched the wooden door furiously, jerked the handle up and down, and chaotically fumbled with long fingers along the frames and walls. And all this madness happened in complete, dead silence. Not a single gasp nor heavy human breathing could be heard from behind the door. Only the suffocating smell of death and old formaldehyde poured from the gap. Together with the first rays of dawn, a dead silence finally fell over the corridor. No one was stretching the walls anymore. No one was forcing their way into my night office. But for a very long time, I physically could not open my hands and let go of the door handle. I just stood there, pressed against the wood, clutching the metal with my fingers, which had turned white from the wild tension. A persistent, loud ring of the intercom buzzed me back to reality and forced me to open the latch. The corridor looked completely normal and was empty. Because of this, for a second, it seemed to me that everything that happened at night was just a wild nightmare dream of an exhausted mind. The iron lock, as always, jammed badly, and it took me a long time to open it with my trembling hands. Finally, I succeeded. My relief shift worker was standing on a porch. "Man, you're a heavy sleeper, buddy. I've been ringing for an hour," he exclaimed, stepping inside. I instantly mumbled something about secretly drinking too much medical alcohol during the night, not hearing anything, and that basically it was best not to bother me today. The day was already in full swing, but I still couldn't bring myself to go home. I nervously smoked one cigarette after another on the porch of the staff entrance, desperately trying to convince myself that the nightly horror was just a hallucination. Dr. Andrews was standing next to me. He was cheerfully asking me about something. I answered him mechanically, while in my head only one obsessive thought was pounding. It was a dream. This simply cannot be real. Just then, a pale young intern quickly stepped out onto the porch. He was breathing heavily. "Dr. Andrews, we have a very strange, inexplicable case here," he said excitedly. "I was just preparing the corpse of that drowned man on the autopsy table, the one the police brought in from the river 2 days ago. Well, his fingernails are packed full of old white paint. And what's so strange about that?" Dr. Andrews exhaled lazily, ash flipping from his cigarette. "The guy could have been painting a fence or a boat before he fell into the water. Yes, sir, the paint is indeed dried and old. The intern swallowed, his voice trembling. But the thing is, all those deep cracks and tears on the corpse's fingernails, they are fresh and they are absolutely post-mortem. He was clawing at something with his hands well after his heart had stopped beating. They walked back into the autopsy room, arguing loudly, while I slowly dropped my cigarette and walked down the T-shaped corridor toward the door of my night office. I stepped closer. At a human's chest height, on the perfectly smooth, white-painted wooden surface of my door, fresh, deep semicircular scratches and jagged torn gouges from human fingernails stood out clearly.